Right. So just a heads up, we do have a short session together today, but if you want to go ahead and grab like a little piece of paper and something to write with, you can. You may want to get started on what we are going to be doing today or talking about today, but you may not finish it today in the session. So it could be something that you continue to work on later on, or that you take what we learned today and then try it on your own later on. But if you want to doodle and stuff with us later on, you can. You may also want to have your chat open because we will be doing a quick little check-in in the chat once we start. All right, I think I'm gonna go ahead and dive in. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen real quick. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Can I get like a thumbs up or nods and stuff?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So let me start off by talking a little bit about who I am, right? So my name is Cassidy Fritts. I am the programs coordinator over at a fantastic organization called AC. Some of you may have heard of us before, but those of you who have not, we stand for San Antonio Youth Yes. And we believe in providing tuition-free arts programming to San Antonio youth just like you all. So we focus on giving artistic opportunities and studio practice opportunities to San Antonio youth so that youth can become creative leaders. So does that mean becoming artists? Not necessarily. You can always be an artist. But a lot of our students go on to be all kinds of things, including architects and all these other professions that art really helps them become creative problem solvers and stuff and lets them excel in what they really, really want to pursue. So with that being said, today I am here to talk to you all about art as a revolutionary act. And we will be doing a little interactive activity at the end of this that I hope helps you out later in life after this session ends. So, art as a revolutionary act. So, we know that art plays a huge role in how we live our everyday lives, really. And some of us may not know that realization just yet. So, what I want to do is go ahead and do a quick check in. This is something that we do with our students, with our staff, with our friends, etc. It's a good way to kind of get our gears rolling in our head, make us start thinking. We're warming up to what we are going to talk about. And what I want you to do is go ahead and in the chat, take a moment and think about how you experience art in your daily life. So, how do you consume art in your life, right? Some of us may automatically start thinking, well, I go to the museum or I make art or I keep a sketchbook and stuff. All of that totally valid. But you may want to think a little harder. How else do you consume art in your life? Are you on Instagram scrolling through artist profiles? Are you looking at posters in your classroom? Ismail said that they draw and imagine different things. That's something. Watching TV, etc. Go ahead and in the chat, let's go ahead and just start emptying our brains out of ideas of how we consume art in our lives. And if you want to unmute and share, you totally can too. I am so open to that. I love that. Awesome. Music is a huge part of our lives, and that is art. Looking at everyday things out of the window of a car, beautiful. Awesome. Photography and art, yes, beautiful. Cool. Adrian kind of has this idea of like imagination being art, which is totally valid. Like we kind of make our own movies in our head sometimes. That's super cool. Animations, video games, even.
That's true, especially when you're listening to music. I would visualize different things that would go with it. That's always
Yeah,
fun. It's always really fun.
definitely. So, like, as we can see in the chat and as we talk about it and stuff, we know that we experience art every single day in so many different ways. So, it plays a huge role in who we are, but it also plays a huge role in how we document time and how we document what is happening in the world. So, when we talk about art being revolutionary, we can talk about those big ideas of what revolution means, right? We think about big historic moments, where people are fighting for something good for society, you know? And so there's some examples here on our screen right here, some past examples, some more modern examples. Sometimes we don't always think of art as something being revolutionary, but it plays a huge role in how we learn about things and how we talk about things with one another. So a good example of like just a painting that talks about revolution, right, is up there in the left corner. That is a painting done by Pablo Picasso called Guernica, and it's documenting some serious events that happened during a war. But then when we look over to the right, we see this billboard that maybe we don't always think of as art, right? We don't always think of these like traffic signs and stuff as being art. But an artist, Jenny Holzer, actually utilizes things like this to put messages out into the world to talk about revolutionary things. And then we go down to the bottom right corner and we see like a little snippet of a mural. And that mural is done by Diego Rivera, who does a lot of work about revolutionary moments in time, especially in Mexican history. And then when we go kind of over farther to the left, we see some portraits of some people we may recognize. And now these portraits were super revolutionary in art and in the way we view politics and things in the US. Typically, we see portraits of presidents being kind of more formal, very, everything is kind of uniform. Obama went ahead and decided he wanted a more artistic expression of who he was as a president. And Michelle Obama wanted the same. So this is a revolutionary piece of art because it documents how, how things were during this political climate. And then in the middle, we have a little photo of Yoko Ono, who some people may know of. She was the girlfriend and wife of John Lennon, one of the Beatles. But she was an artist, a performance artist, and she did a lot of work about being a woman and how people view women and stuff. And so we can see art as revolutionary through different time periods, through different events, and different methods. So we see things like paintings, we see things like performance, we see things like utilizing everyday objects to talk about political events, revolutionary moments. Now, art revolutionary on that sense, where we talk about these bigger moments in time, these big ideas, and a lot of big things are happening right now, right? Times right now are a little weird. Times right now can be a little stressful, but there's some really amazing things happening. Now, all of this is really big and it's kind of happening just like all around us, right? Sometimes we can feel like we don't have control over the things around us. So what I want to do is talk a little bit more about how art can be revolutionary for ourselves, okay? So when we talk about things being revolutionary, what I always like to go back to is this statement that is, my existence is resistance. So that kind of brings us back into this mindset where we think about revolution, not necessarily just being about these big things that are happening around us that maybe we are indirectly impacted by or indirectly influenced by, but we start to think more about, I am revolutionary. The things that I think, the things that I stand for, I am revolutionary because it's true. Okay, so we all play this huge role in how we interact as a community, how we grow as a community. And oftentimes we feel a little disconnected from that because we don't always draw the line between myself and the people around me or the events around me. So, what I want to do in today's session, instead of talking about all these huge things that are just around us and stuff, because we're doing a lot of that today and yesterday, pretty much all the time, talking about all these big things around us. I kind of want to reel it back in. Let's focus a little more on us as the revolutionary act. Okay. And so a lot of people think of art as something like a painting and stuff that we've already talked about this, but art can manifest itself in different ways. Like I said at the beginning, at CC, when we talk about art, when we teach art, we don't necessarily think about it in the way that everyone's going to go on to become professional artists. We think about it as teaching ourselves skills to become better at what we really want to excel at. And so art helps us with that. So what we're going to explore today is the idea of illustrated mind maps. Has anyone heard of a mind map before?
No.
No? Okay, I see some head shaking. Well,
Um,
cool.
I feel like I did one time with this teacher. What wasn't there an assignment Miss Castro gave us one time where she was like, draw things of like stuff that You would draw like stuff, your culture, your if you have a religion, types of food you ate,
Oh,
and then like
like a frame?
yeah, our frame. But that was basically I feel like a mind map because mind maps are just like things you think of and who you are and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure, right?
Yes, beautiful. So a mind map can be utilized in very different ways. A mind map could simply be that you are writing down ideas. A mind map often looks like a web of thoughts kind of connect to one another. So what I want to do is kind of take that idea of a mind map and turn it into something that we can use to talk about how we're feeling right now during this time period. So before we dive into talking a little more about what that looks like, how do we make one, etc. I want to look at a few examples that may help you understand a little more of the direction that you can go in with an illustrated mind map. So instead of just writing, you can add doodles, you can add images, etc. So we're going to look at a few different examples that I've found that I think gives you kind of a range of options of inspiration that you can really look at to see what direction you want to take your mind map in. So what we see on the screen here is a big image with a lot of tiny words and drawings, right? This image, it was created by an artist who goes by the name Fuller. And this artist actually travels around the world and takes images of all of these cities and stuff and actually draws extremely elaborate illustrations of all of these cities. Now, what they actually did during this time of like weirdness with COVID and stuff, they actually wanted to go ahead and take a moment and reflect back in on themselves. So when we're in quarantine and stuff, we kind of are by ourselves. So they went ahead and utilized that feeling to reflect on what things are what is happening around them essentially. So this is actually a map that Fuller created to talk a little bit more about the pandemic that we're experiencing right now. And as you can see, it connects us to so many different ideas. It's not just one thing. It's kind of hard to take all these feelings and consolidate it into one idea or one perspective. So instead, this is a really good example to show how they took all these things that are going on around them and put them into one image that illustrates what they think and how things are going. And so this isn't a realistic map, right? This isn't something that you would actually go see. But it's taking all these ideas and creating a landscape for us to apply our own perspective so that we can feel. One example. This is a really good example of something simple, just black and white ink, right? But it's also pretty complex in that they combine text, words, and stuff along with images. So drawing buildings and vehicles, etc. So this is totally a direction you could go with in your mind map if you wanted to, but this isn't the only option. Another source of inspiration includes these two artists right here. The one on the left is Henny Hayworth, and the one on the right, I believe their name is Lorenzo. I always mess up the last name, so forgive me, but Petrontoni. I think they are Italian. But these I thought were also really good examples of what a mind map could look like. So Henny's doesn't really use a lot of text. Henny's uses a lot of imagery. And so I forget which student unmuted themselves to share like what they thought a mind map was, but I think this kind of connects a little more to what you were talking about. So using images to stand as symbols for ideas, for what like culture and things that like bigger concepts, right? So these images are able to kind of tell us a story or give us a feeling of what uh, is really happening in this entire composition instead of just writing out everything, right? And although things aren't necessarily connected by like lanes and stuff, kind of like what we saw on the map before this, we know that they're all connected because they're next to each other. They're in the same image. So a mind doesn't necessarily have to draw those connections physically. It could be that your mind map just shows symbols like this. Really, your mind map can be whatever you want it to be. But this is one other source of inspiration you could go to. So a lot of color, a lot of imagery, and then on the other side, on the right side, we see a little more text, but it's quite literally a mind map. It's words coming out of the head. And I thought that was a really cool image because this could be something you utilize in your mind map as well. It could be that you want to include yourself in it, or include a person in it to stand for yourself, or like an object even. And then showing things coming out of it. So it could be that your mind map doesn't even really look like a map. It could be that your mind map is something like spewing out of something else, a volcano. It really depends on like how you're feeling, right? So when we go into talking more about our mind maps, what I really want to do is make sure that we are focusing more on how we are feeling and what we think of what is going on around us. So again, we're no longer really looking at all these big concepts and trying to define them and talk about them further and stuff, but instead we're reeling it back in and we're focusing on how we think about these things, how we feel about these things, because those feelings and those thoughts are revolutionary in and of themselves. Okay. So moving on to talking about our mind maps specifically. Materials, pretty simple. Paper, anything to write with. You can color it if you want to. It doesn't matter what size it is or anything like that. Because what we really want you to understand from this practice is that you can use it to develop it into anything you want. Your mind map could be a piece of artwork in and of itself, or it could be something that become something else, right? So mind maps can help us document. Like we said, art is revolutionary. It documents moments in time. This mind map is documenting how you're feeling right here, right now about things going on around you. You could use mind maps to express, which is quite literally drawing or writing or whatever you want to do to your mind map to talk about how you feel. Mind maps can help us brainstorm. So it could be that your mind map isn't necessarily just all about expression, but it could be like, actually, I do want to make something after this, or I want to write something after this, or I want to share something after this. So your mind map could quite literally be an opportunity for you to brainstorm and document all these notes that you have floating around in your noggin to lead to something else, which is the next step, developing something. But mind maps can also help us develop as people. So when we really focus more in on ourselves internally, intrinsically, and we document those things physically, whether it's doodles, whether it's writing and stuff, what we start to notice is that we start to become more knowledgeable about ourselves. Sometimes we find things that are floating around in our heads that we didn't know we were actually thinking about or actually feeling. And it's a way for us to develop as people because we start to understand ourselves a little more, understand a little more about how we're feeling right now, and come to terms with it, really, confront it. Sometimes we avoid that. And these things can be like really simple ways to do that. So, how do I start? How do you start a mind map? It kind of sounds like a big idea when we look at our examples and stuff like, that's insane. How did that guy get from like maybe just writing a list or something to this giant map? How did he do that? So, some ideas that I have are to start doodling, start writing, start making lists. I'm definitely a list maker. So, I have an example actually that I wanted to share. In addition to working at SACY and being programs coordinator and whatnot, I'm also an artist outside of that. So I create art on a daily basis and I work on big projects. So a project that I'm about to jump into is actually decorating this big air purifier that's part of this big show to fundraise money to get air purifiers to schools that don't necessarily have the funds to get those things. So to help out kids like y'all to make sure that the air is clean. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen so that I can show you all what I have going on my mind map. Let me spotlight myself, or can one of my facilitators possibly spotlight my video, please? Not sure if anyone has the capabilities, but if you can pin my video at all, you can see my mind map right here. And so I'm a big fan of letters and words and stuff. So my mind map kind of started over here where I drew my air purifier. I was like, all right, I've got to come up with something to put on this air purifier. what am I gonna do? So I just started by just doodling out my air purifier and like putting the name of the project. And I was like, okay, like the whole point of an air purifier is to clean the air. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to doodle these words and I'm going to figure out what that leads to. And then I was like, well, it's for a bunch of kids. And so I put for the kids and kind of doodled it out and stuff. And then it led me to thinking about what's happening in the world right now. The whole reason why we need air purifiers right now. It's weird. Times are weird. That's totally valid. So I did some funky words to talk about times being weird. And I came to this idea of talking about clearing the air. And so I came up with this idea to paint eventually onto my air purifier, which I'm going to do soon. So I used this whole mind map to come up with my concept for a bigger project. So you can use mind maps that way. So when we talk about creating mind maps right now in terms of art as a revolutionary act, again, I think it's super important for us to focus and meditate a little more on just how you're feeling and what you are witnessing right now. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be about those big events. It could be that you're really hungry. It could be that you're super tired because you didn't get enough sleep. But those simple little things that you're feeling right now on your mind map, those could be connected to bigger ideas that are happening around you. So, does anyone have any questions so far about mind maps? Cool.
No.
Cool. Well, we have some time. So, if you have paper and pencil with you, I would invite you to do a little bit of doodling with me, or just brainstorming for your mind map. I'm going to work on something, and then maybe in a few minutes we can check in and see what we've got going on for our mind maps. So in the chat for now, I'm actually going to go ahead and put some links in there to help you out with looking for inspiration. So these are the websites of the artists that we just looked at. You can check out those artists for more examples of their work, which could totally be relevant to the mind maps that we are working on. Especially Fuller's maps. Fuller's maps are super intricate, super cool, and when you travel around the maps, you find new things all the time. And that could be happening with your mind map. If you have any questions or even comments and you're just like, this is like what I'm feeling about mind maps and whatnot, you could totally comment that in the chat, or we could talk about it out loud. We've got a few minutes to do so. Has anyone ever created a mind map before?
Honestly, no.
Totally cool. Honestly, you could have done it before and you just don't realize it yet. Like the more we talk
No, I
about it,
think I
maybe.
have just like once or twice.
Yeah.
It's in my drawing journal, my sketchbook. It's up there somewhere. Probably
I
grab it right now,
feel
maybe.
like this is probably the third time I'm doing this. Cause
Cool.
I did it one time with my art teacher, and I remember I drew a cube. I think I did. Did I do Baby Groot? I think I did Baby Groot.
Ooh, dude, nice.
Yeah, I have this really good drawing that came out really well of Baby Groot, and it looks actually like him. So that one was nice.
Adorable. So
Yeah.
I'm spotlit right now, so I'm just going to show my example mind map one more time, just in case people didn't get a chance to really see it bigger. So like I said, these arrows even connecting my ideas, I didn't draw those till the very end because I didn't know where it was leading me. I was just like, I have to come up with an idea for this. And so it could be that your mind map starts off more with like writing down a question, like when I talked about meditating on like what we are feeling or what we are thinking about
Bro,
in terms
whatever I'm drawing right now is coming out so good. I actually shouldn't have drawn it on my actual notebook. I'll try and copy it down on my actual sketchbook later.
yeah, you can still do that later. To start, you could do something like this, or even start a list of sorts, because I started right here and then I just started doodling other things that started to come to my mind, and eventually it led me to an idea. And so it could be that you're just like drawing things or writing things down across a piece of paper, and then you start to draw the connections between the things that you are putting down. So illustrated mind maps, they're super fun. I'm going to share my screen again so you can see those examples one more time. So going back to the examples, right? So it could be that this artist didn't even start with drawing on one piece of paper. It could be that they went through multiple different series of this to figure out where things fit even. And that's kind of like how things like our sketchbooks function, how our journals function. Does anyone like write in the margins of their notes and stuff, or doodle in the margins of their notes? It could be that
I
those
feel that's
doodles
like
and
for a
things.
lot of people,
It
especially at
could
my
be that.
old middle school. I would do that
Uh-huh.
sometimes because I would be bored and I'll
Yeah.
draw something amazing. Like, oh man.
Yeah, well, it could be that you find those doodles, those notes that you've written in the margins of your notes for school and whatnot, and combine them into something more. Because sometimes those little ideas that just like pop up in our heads that we write down elsewhere could become part of a bigger picture like this. And then going back to these other examples too, it could be just like how my example started with just like one image, kind of like the one on the right. You could start with just a face, an object, and see where that takes your mind next. It could be that you just doodle a bunch of pictures. All of that is completely valid. This mind map is totally up to you, totally yours to explore, you know, and it could be that it's not something that you do share later on, but you totally could if you wanted to. Has anyone been working on a mind map while we've been
Me?
talking?
Yeah.
So finish.
Ooh, I see some cool stuff. How neat. Ismail, do you want to share a little bit about like where your mind map is taking you?
I don't know. I haven't colored it in, but I haven't even finished. I'm just sketching out everything that's in my head. Everything that I like. I
Very
love
cool.
meatloaf. Meatloaf is yummy. Especially the way my mom makes it with like barbecue sauce and vegetables
Awesome.
in it. It's nice. It's yummy.
How cool. See, like your mind map could be just focusing on these smaller things in your life right now. It doesn't necessarily have to be that we think about these huge things all the time, right? I know sometimes when we think about these big things happening around us, it can feel like a weight on our shoulders, right?
That's true.
And like the more we talk about it, the more we see stuff about it, we're like, oh, it's getting so heavy. How do I get
That's
this
true. That's
weight
how I
off
feel
of me?
sometimes.
Yeah. Well,
Like I want
doing
to do
things.
something big, but like sometimes it
Mhm.
becomes too much and I'm just breaking down over here.
Yeah, so that's totally valid. That happens. And especially right now, right? Things are weird, things are strange. And so, this mind map, illustrating things, writing things down, that weight could totally just come off of you in this mind map right now, right? It could be helpful. Well, we're coming down to like our last minute together, which makes me kind of sad because I love doing things with students from CAST and ALA.
Why can't we stay
Um,
here?
well, you can keep working on it. I totally encourage you all to continue working on your mind maps. What I'm going to put in the chat actually is going to be a link to something that Stacey has created to help students like you, people that we work with, share their work with us. So say you keep working on your mind map and you're like, this is turning out super cool and I want to keep working on it, and then show Cassidy later on or something, you could totally just go ahead and submit it to this Google form that I'm going to put in here so that we can see the awesome creations that you come up with, right?
Okay.
And again, a mind map is totally up to you. It can be personal. So it could be that you don't want to share it. That's fine. But it could also, sharing things like this could also encourage other people to explore something like this. And so sharing it with us, sharing it with your peers, sharing it on Instagram, whatever you use, it could be that you help other people learn a way to talk a little more about what's going on up here, especially during these weird times, right? Well, I think we are 1 minute over, so I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping things up. I want to thank you all for coming in and doing this with me and listening to me talk about these cool illustrations and whatnot. I hope you learned something new today, and I hope you take this stuff and you practice it in your life, right? It
Are
could
you
be
sure
in
we
your.
can't stay?
I wish you
Huh?
could. I wish you could. But I hope you all have a great day. I might see you again in the future as we continue to work with CAST and ALA. But enjoy the rest of the youth rally. And I can't wait to see some of these mind maps. So I hope you share them with me one day.
All right, wait. So which link is it? Services
So
schedule. I found it. Everyone keeps
you
chatting.
got it. Yep.
All right.
All right.
So
Thank
do we go back
you.
to the main session?
It sounds like you have a break from 11:30 to 2:30.
11:30, you say. Enough for some cheese sticks and applesauce.
Oh, that's why. Okay, okay.
You sure we can't stay?
Thank you guys.
All right, bye, Venice.
Okay. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for interacting with
Add
me
Adrian. We
today.
can